Welcome to Cancer and Peace Moments. This is Peter. These moments are 15-minute clips of the larger episodes. Blessings.
We're not trying to make this too recovery centric, but we would think of that in recovery, though, as a step for moral inventory. And do you want to just describe a bit of what that looked like for you and why it's such an important part a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the word moral, because the step is to do a fearless and moral inventory. The word moral just means honest. That's a big word for me because I had not been honest with myself, God, and others. And there were some things in my life, I'll call them character defects, sins. There were some things in my life that I was not even aware of, really. And so for the first time, I entered into a space with another person to do this inventory. And it was a process of what we call spiritual mapping, but of looking back in order to go forward. In other words, I love emotionally healthy spirituality says, Jesus may live in your heart, but grandpa lives in your bones. So to go back and to look at my parents, the way I was raised, formative years, my siblings, and people who have had an impact on my life, and that I maybe had hurts with, and to see what happened, what emotions did that bring about, what were some of the results of that, what kind of damage. But then the other part was, what was my part? And I think that's the issue for me. I was big on excuses and rationalizations. So this was the first time in these exercises that I said, okay, I need to own this part. And that was knowing myself, was accepting that I was capable of a lot of stuff. And I mean, codependency bubbled up, which for me was people pleasing, caring more about what people thought about me, attention seeking, recognition seeking, perfectionism, being performance based. And then when I didn't get those things from people, what else boiled up was resentment and anger, unhealthy anger, bitterness. All kinds of things were boiling up. And I was like, wow, I kind of knew some of these things. And so that's the issue is, can I step out of denial, or that mask? Can I step around the mask and face myself honestly?
Yeah.
That was huge for me. It was the first time I had done it. At 42 years of the church, I was 52 years old. First time I admitted and actually confessed these things to another person and to God and myself. I had never done a full inventory list, and out of it came like 21 what we call character defects, but 21 issues.
Yeah, I want to just highlight something you said, because when we say the inner journey, I think there might be a temptation to go, well, hey, I'll go take some notes on myself. But there's an important aspect of what you shared there that I want to just maybe highlight, and that is, when we do a fearless moral inventory, it is taking and journaling down significant relationships in our life, the impact of those relationships, what positives or damage that's come out of that, and then how we've responded in our lives to this. But I like to think of this also as the getting to reality piece there, but to get to reality, you can't do that inside of your head. You have to share this with another person. Mm-hmm. And I think it's better if it's shared even inside of a group. Now, you started out with a counselor who had a lot of wisdom, and so I think that's good. But sharing that journey and those stories will help you if you share that with somebody else who has the ability to ask good questions and to help you see whether or not you're living in reality. Because once you identify certain things that are happening in your lives and you're willing to admit to those. And I thought about it for a long time for myself, and I see this as a pattern all along. It's like we normalize our formative years. I think where we grew up, we normalize that, no matter, even if it's abusive or if it's has all kinds of negative things that happen in your family growing up. We normalize that as this is the way life is. And to me, some of the most shocking stories are people who have normalized sexual abuse and things like this. But they do. And it's a real thing that happens. And so to get to reality, you have to share it, because then you can have somebody speaking to, you can actually using more than yourself, find out what is reality, what is normal, what's acceptable, what is real, and what's not in my life. And so there's a temptation to say, hey, I'm just going to write down this inventory and hold it to myself. And yes, I'll maybe even tell God, hey, you can look at the list. But unless you're willing to share that and get feedback on it, you're not going to move into this step of reality. So that's a big piece of the coming up step then is that before we get to that part, I just wanted to say that we have something in when you recognize that your life, areas of your life have not been lived in reality. There's a process that I think each one of us needs to go through to get to renewal. And that is, and I'm going to name it, we'll take it out of even the Christian realm. It's basically whatever the truth is that you actually need to embrace is to begin stating that truth. We suggest doing that in the Christian realm is find biblical truths about who God says you are and what God says about your situation. And for 90 days solid, take time to say that over and over to God as a prayer. But I think as a general concept, getting that truth deeply in you is what's important. And so if you find yourselves, and I was listening to the Wild at Heart guys, and one of the guys was talking about learning how to fly, and he made a mistake and in landing. Because his muscle memory for flying that particular plane told him to do something. And the moment he was doing a turbo, it put him in reverse and he nearly crashed the plane. And immediately he called himself an idiot. And you're such a loser. Now, on the surface, you were like, well, we say these kind of things all the time. But this is usually a story that comes from a place that's usually formative. And when you're in a crisis mode and those are the words that come out of your mouth, you literally have to have your mind renewed and a truth renewed that you're not a loser. You're not an idiot. You're a person that God loves who's been made for a purpose. And the more you can rely on that truth, that reality, and the more real it is to you, and as you walk and live in that, it brings great peace.
Yeah.
But that's like this restoration, renewing the mind. And the mind must have this kind of repetitive process for at least 90 days before those truths sink in. It becomes part of who we are. And we've exchanged kind of the lie for truth. Because these are just deeply embedded in us. And for some of us, it's longer than that, but a minimum of 90 days of just repeating those truths to defeat the lies that we've kind of grown up with, the lack of reality. And I think this is something you teach a lot. We do inventory workshops here, and we talk to the guys that come through that this is such an important step is once you get to, hey, I know I have these issues in my life, these character defects. But what's the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about then peace with ourselves, peace with God, but the final step that we want to talk about is peace with others. And there's still a process to go about there, and it really is when you've done an inventory. What happens is that in our programs and the things that we've done is you've written down names of somebody and the interactions that have happened and the effect on your life, and that's flowed out into how you've responded to those people. And to get peace with others is you're going to find when you've done the inventory, there's times when they've hurt you or you've hurt them. And when you find that those two things are the case, if you really want to get to deep peace is to forgive them when they've hurt you. So going through a forgiveness process, and then where you know that you have caused harm, it's your job to go out and make that right in any way you can. A lot of times it's just asking for an apologize, asking for forgiveness yourself. Sometimes you can do steps of actual restoration. If you've taken something, done something that you can rebuild or restore, you should. And that moves you to a place to have peace with others. So peace with yourself, peace with God, and peace with others are the things that we're talking about and why it really fits into cancer and peace.
One of my good friends who was an APRN. She had always prayed for me and was really interested, married to one of my really good buddies. And our kids grew up together. We've been family friends for a long time. She had breast cancer, which turned metastatic. And She knew she was going to pass. She was in her late 50s. And she had me over. I had brought a dinner over, and she said to me, "Is there anything I've done that I need to say that I'm sorry for?" And I just really respected that place that she was going to. She was making peace with others. She wanted, when she left this earth, she didn't want anything. She wanted to experience complete peace within herself. So
important part of the journey.
yeah.
And I've seen the opposite too. I've seen
Yes.
people who have hung on to bitterness, and what they've given up in that is peace.
Yes.
And so our encouragement is to really look at this and just think about, as we're wrapping up this episode, we wanted to connect why you hear so much about recovery. And you've heard, both of us have had our own recovery journeys, and we've found this to be so valuable, is to recognize our powerlessness, our need for God, to start walking in reality, look for peace inside of ourselves, getting to reality and being able to release that, getting peace with God and trusting Him with our futures, and then taking all that we've learned in that and trying to build peace with others. What an amazing part.
Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Blessings.